Welcome back to Imagine Recaps. Today we are going to recap an action fantasy movie called Eragon. Be ready for spoilers ahead. A dragon is flying peacefully across the sky, but suddenly, it is attacked and a full-blown dragon war begins. A dragon rider, called Galbatorix, had started a war and killed all the dragons plus their riders and became the sole ruler of the kingdom of Algesia. A young lady called Arya rides for her life after stealing a stone from this brutal king. She is being followed closely from behind by Durza, the king's highest-ranked mercenary, and his men. He jumps and knocks Arya from her horse and she rolls down a cliff. Durza uses dark magic and makes a fire which surrounds and corners Arya. He walks right through the fire and demands for the stone, but Arya lifts the stone up, and it vanishes into thin air and she falls down. On the other side, a young boy called Eragon is hunting in the forest nearby. As he is aiming for a gazelle, a bright light flashes and the stone falls on the ground. He slowly and carefully approaches the strange stone and picks it up. The next day, Eragon walks into the village where the king's soldiers are terrorizing the poor citizens. He walks into a butchery and attempts to trade the stone for some meat, but when the butcher sees the stone, he is filled with fear and does not want anything to do with it, so he sends Eragon away. That night, as Eragon is resting, the stone begins to shake and crack. It smashes open and a small dragon is hatched. Eragon had confused it for a stone, but it was actually an egg, a dragon egg. He stretches his arm and touches it, and immediately, Arya, who was now the prison of Durza, sensed it and knew the egg had hatched. Through his dark powers, Durza is able to see where and who had the dragon. When Eragon opens his hand, he sees a spiral sign, a sign of the bond between him and the dragon and a symbol of a dragon rider. He tried to feed it milk, but it did not drink it. Instead, it jumped behind the haystacks and swallowed a rat hole. The king, Galbatorix, summoned Durza to his chambers and orders him to get and kill the young boy, as news of a dragon rider would encourage more rebellion against his rule, especially from a resistance group called the Varden. So, Durza uses his dark magic to summon dark soldiers and he commands them to find and kill Eragon, the dragon rider. Eragon goes to the village market where he finds the villagers crying, as their sons had been taken to join the king's army against their will and they never returned. A drunk man called Brom had heard enough. He starts telling a story of a time when dragon and dragon riders ruled peacefully until Galbatorix betrayed them and killed them to keep all the power. The king's soldiers quickly quiet him and send him away, and Eragon is left there, with a lot of unanswered questions. The next day, Eragon takes his dragon to the field to teach it how to fly. He threw it in the air and it took off. It flies higher and higher, until it was out of his sight. Suddenly, the spiral on his hand begins to glow. At the same time, the dragon grew bigger, and when it landed back, it was an adult-sized dragon. In addition, it was able to communicate with him telepathically. Late that night, he goes to see Brom as he wants to know more about dragons. The now sober Brom does not like this visit. He is fearful that the king's soldiers would hear them, so he sends Eragon away immediately. Eragon walks out of his house, but on his way home, something felt strange. Durza's dark assassins had arrived and were in the butcher's shop torturing him to give up Eragon's location. Eragon understood that their next destination would be his home, so he ran as fast as possible as he knew his uncle's life was in danger. Out of nowhere, the dragon flies down and scoops him up and flies away with him. Eragon begs the dragon to put him down, but it refuses as he would get killed. He slips, but it catches his leg with its claws. He climbs back up to its back but slips again. Luckily this time, he holds on to its tail. After struggling to hold on, the dragon flies down and drops him on a pile of haystacks. When he arrived at his house, it was too late. His uncle's lifeless body was lying on the ground. Eragon could not believe it. He turns his attention towards the dragon and blames it for his death, as it delayed his arrival to help his uncle, and angrily, he chases it away, and the dragon flies off. The poor boy becomes emotional to a point that he sheds tears. Brom arrives at the door and drags Eragon out. He throws him on a horse and they both drive off from the place. Eragon could only watch as his home burns to the ground with his uncle inside. They ride off as far as possible but finally stop to take a short rest. Brom was taking Eragon to the Varden, as that was the only place he could be safe from Durza's assassins. He tells Eragon to call his dragon, and when he does, it immediately flies down from the clouds as it never left him. It only kept a small distance between them, to make sure he was safe. On the other side, Durza appears in front of his soldiers. He instructs them to track down Eragon and bring his head to him before disappearing. Closely behind, the dark assassin spots the dragon flying just above Eragon and locate his exact location. The two ride on until they come across a village on the river bank. They leave their horses behind, and enter to take a rest for the night as they were very tired. Deep in the night, as Eragon was moving around, he was attacked by Durza's men who had caught up. They tried to escape the village using a bridge, but more men attacked them. Braum tried to fight them, but they were greatly outnumbered. Aragorn picks an arrow from the ground and shoots it. It hits them and blows up, throwing them into the water. As a result, Aragorn becomes weak and loses consciousness. When he woke up, he had a strong headache. By pure instinct, Aragorn had used magic to help them escape. Magic comes from dragons but flows through the riders who command them. Braum warns him to use it as his last result, as it has rules and limitations. Some magic spells would weaken him and leave him unconscious, but other more powerful spells could kill him. Braum knew that the journey ahead would be more dangerous, so Aragorn had to fly. Suddenly, the dragon appears from the cliff and lands. Braum had arranged for a saddle to help Aragorn ride more comfortably. He climbs on it and the dragon drops from the cliff. They ride through the river valley as Aragorn learns how to control it. The two glide through the skies as Braum follows closely from behind on his horse. Aragorn learns a new trick. His eyes turn blue and he could see what the dragon was seeing through its eyes. Down below, the dark assassins caught up with Braum. When Aragorn zooms in, he sees them chasing behind Braum to attack. He directs his dragon through a small opening and they go after them. One of them jumps and knocks Aragorn off and his dragon hits a tree, tumbling and falling. Luckily, Braum jumps in to defend them. After a small fight, he knocks one into the ground and stabs him with his sword and the dark assassin melts into the ground. The dragon's wing had been injured in the process, so Braum applied herbs for quick recovery. He was not happy with Aragorn as what he had done was too risky and he endangered the life of his dragon. It turns out, Braum was also a dragon rider, but his dragon died. On the other side, Durza is getting tired of their failure. He kills his commander on the spot when they returned without the boy. This time he uses a different trick. He uses dark magic to infect Arya and appears into Aragorn's dream as her. He requests him to come and save her as Durza held her as a prisoner. The next morning, against Braum's advice, he climbs on his dragon and rides off to save Arya. He arrives at Gilead where Arya was a prisoner. He waits for nightfall and enters inside the palace. He goes straight to where Arya was being held, but Arya was not happy to see him. Durza's plan had worked perfectly and effortlessly. Aragorn had taken the bait and delivered himself to him. A full-blown fight begins between the two. Durza throws a spear towards Aragorn, but Braum jumps on its path, taking the hit. Angrily, Aragorn shoots Durza on the head and he disappears into thin air. As the three try to escape, Durza's soldiers surround them. The dragon drops in through the roof and fights off the soldiers. Aragorn is also helped by a young hooded man on the roof. They get on its back and fly off from the prison. Braum's injuries were severe, and he was slowly but surely dying. Aragorn tries to use magic, but his effort bore no fruit. The only thing they could do was to let him die with pride as a dragon rider. So he takes one last ride on a dragon and pass away. They bury his body on a hill and the dragon turns his burial stone to glass for remembrance. Durza activates the poison he had injected Arya with and she falls to the ground. Now more than ever they needed to get to the Varden. The young man who helped them earlier appears and offers to help guide them. The two ride on their horses, as the dragon carries the sick Arya. After a long ride, they finally arrive at a waterfall, the secret entrance of the Varden hiding place. They quickly jumped into the water as Durza's men had caught up. They swim below the waterfall and when they reach the other side, they are welcomed. On the other side, King Galbatorix summoned Durza. He was extremely unhappy that he was unable to complete the task given, but at the same time, he was happy as now he knew the hiding place of the Varden. He is given new instructions to gather the entire king's army and go after them and to leave no one alive. Aragorn meets with the leader of Varden. He asks for help as Arya was slowly dying. He calls the dragon and it flies in through the water and lands inside. Arya was still alive but very weak. Durza and his men arrive outside the Varden's hiding place. They are into the thousands and greatly outnumber the Varden. Suddenly, the walls are knocked to the ground, and Galbatorix's army run inside and charge towards the Varden and a full-blown war begins. Aragorn and his dragon are dressed in full armor ready to fight. They fly and join the fight, blasting the enemy with fire. The Varden fight hard but unfortunately, more soldiers arrive, but Aragorn blasts them with fire from above. When Durza sees this, he uses dark magic and a smoke dragon appears from the fires. He blasts the Varden and challenges Aragorn. Aragorn's dragon tries to blast its head off but the demon dragon feels nothing. The two dragons collide and start to fight. In the process, Aragorn's dragon takes a bite on its neck. This weakens it a lot as it loses strength. Durza shoots a ball of fire but Aragorn jumps from its tail and stabs him in the chest. He bursts into flames and disintegrates to nothing. As Aragorn was falling full speed to his death, the dragon caught him and they both fell to the ground. The dragon got seriously injured during the fight. Aragon tries to use magic to heal its wound, but he falls and loses consciousness, and the two lie there on the floor both unconscious. When he woke up, they had won the war, his dragon flies in and it was okay. The movie ends as Aragon flies away after saving the people from this brutal king. Please like and subscribe for more.